J'avais beaucoup plus qu'un lopin, un jardin dans un coin, qui pour eux ne valait rien. Quoi, élever deux, trois lapins, moutarde. J'avais beaucoup plus qu'un lopin, un jardin dans un coin, qui pour eux ne valait rien. Quoi, élever deux, trois lapins, moutarde.
Yeah, you are listening to Being There on CIUT 89.5 FM. My name is Jessie Mendes. Welcome to the show, everyone. I got a treat lined up for you today. Today's program is a look at a religious controversy that unfolded right here recently on the University of Toronto campus. I think last November, a chapter of the international organization Courage, a self-described support group for homosexuals in the Catholic Church that promotes a life of chastity and celibacy, was invited to the Newman Center, a parish that serves U of T students. Word of their presence at the St. Thomas Aquinas parish prompted over a dozen parishioners to leave, as well as several council members and liturgical ministers to resign. So, what was the controversy about? Well, from what I have learned, Courage preaches that, in essence, homosexuality is a disease, and they've developed a 12-step program to help heal the condition. The pledge new members must take include, quote, "We admit that we are powerless over homosexuality. We have come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity." This in the year 2013, folks. And, of course, when I heard about this, I knew that I had to cover it. I was appalled. Despite complaints, Courage continues to be supported by the Newman Center. Although I should say here, as you are listening to University of Toronto Radio, that apparently the University of Toronto has dissociated themselves from this whole mess. So we have to give them credit for that. But as I said, Courage continues to be supported by the Newman Center right here on U of T campus. So in studio today, I have Stuart Graham, a former liturgical minister and lector at the parish who was one of those who resigned. A Saskatchewan-born baritone, Stuart is the founder and artistic director of Atelier S, an umbrella, not-for-profit, or arts organization which acts as an incubator for artistic expression, a place for artists to train and explore their craft with guidance from internationally renowned mentors. Now in his 18th year as a pedagogue, Stuart enjoys a solid reputation as a strong advocate and teacher of the lyric arts. I love the sound of that. He is regularly called upon to educate graduate level recitals for the Glenn Gould Studio of the Royal Conservatory of Music. Once again, my name is Jessie Mendes. You are listening to Being There on CIUT 89.5 FM, and I have Stuart Graham sitting across from me. Stuart, welcome.
Thank you, Jessie. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Did I butcher any of those words?
Aquinas.
No.
Yeah, Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas.
It's Aquinas. Oh, right. Yeah,
Yes.
I knew I was going to get that one. Not going to get that one.
And the only other word was adjudicator.
What did I say? Educate?
Educate. That's all right. I accept it without prejudice. I accept
so
it without
many
prejudice.
words.
I know. Such is my complicated and colorful life.
I have to start by thanking Michael Swan. He's the one that put me in touch with you and or helped me to get a message to you, and I was very grateful to him. He's with the Catholic
Register.
Catholic Register, yes. So I do want to give credit to him. I would not have found you, and I'm so grateful to have found you. You're just such a beam of light, I have to say, and it's such a treat to know you. And of course, I get worked up with things like this. We're going to talk about what happened with the controversy. We're going to start there, but I also want to get to, you have a vision, of the church, before, politics became, sort of took over things. And I'd like to hear you talk about that. But let's first talk about this organization Courage. They have a 12-step program. Where should we start? You want to talk about Courage maybe to start, or do you want to just... what happened, Yeah.
Well, what happened, we saw at the Newman Center in St. Thomas Aquinas Parish, we have to realize that those two things in itself, they're two separate entities. The Newman Center is a student organization that you will find them at most universities across Canada, and they associate with a parish that's close to the universities. And here, the St. Thomas Aquinas Parish, which is part of the Archdiocese of Toronto, is run by the Archdiocese of Toronto. That's the marriage. But the Newman Center is a separate entity, and they can do things. They have a separation, and so Courage is a group that is being facilitated by the Newman Center, not the St. Thomas Aquinas Parish, which. It's splitting hairs, but there's
convoluted, yeah.
But it is part of the politics of this situation as well.
Important to state, yes.
Yes,
definitely.
How it started was, we were just joyfully going to Mass every week, enjoying such a wonderful, brilliant, and vibrant community that it was at that time. I was quite a recent addition to the parish and the involvement of the Newman Center, because in my work as a musician and teacher, I travel a lot, and I'd been, a few years down south, a few years abroad, and in 2010, I found myself back at my home base in Toronto, and seeking a fresh spiritual home. And a friend of mine, who's a recent graduate PhD of theology from the St. Michael's School of Theology, said, "Come with me." And so I went with him to the St. Thomas Aquinas and the Newman Center, and from the moment of walking in, it was such a brilliant place. Here you saw the whole gamut of humanity. You saw young children running through the place. You saw young families. You saw people that had been members of the parish for all of their lives, some of them up to 70 years. You saw faculty. You saw students. You saw people who lived close to the university community but had nothing to do with the academic environment of the university. We saw the whole spectrum of Toronto's diverse religious communities coming to Mass every Sunday at the Newman Center, and it created such a wonderful communion, because it was really the United Nations. You saw people from every country of the planet in there, and what I loved is that everybody was taking care of everybody, a true sense of community. And I was so excited with that, and the fact that there were openly gay men and women, not just as single gay men and women, but also couples, openly coupled gay men and women, celebrating in that community with absolutely no discrimination in the environment or any prejudice. It was glorious.
No kidding.
And a very rare place to find, and be it secular or sacred places anywhere on the planet. And in that, it just, it inspired a person to become generous to the community and to become involved, and so I did. And, being the person of extremes that I am, I became very involved. And but at the end of the summer, we saw a change of pastorship in there, and the priest that was there went to a parish in Etobicoke to be close to his mother, because he had lost his father recently, and so it was to deal with family issues and support there, and we were very sad to see him go, but we understood, and we all embraced change. And Cardinal Collins saw it fit to send Father Chris Kauke, to the parish. And I respect Father Chris very much, and he's a man that believes in what he believes, and I cannot fault him for that, and I do respect him for that. I don't want to turn this into a vendetta of any sort. He's a cog of a much larger machine, and I think just all around, people on all sides of, or all around this issue, I think we need to all sort of shut up and a little bit and really read what's going on, learn what's going on, and then come into this with really informed minds and consciences.
Yes.
Which seems, is the Catholic thing to do. It's about the informed conscience on many levels, and this is something that the Church talks about. And
really?
Yes,
I
it
didn't know
does.
that.
And it actually, before we digress into that, continuing the story, unannounced to the parish, we discovered just on the back page of the bulletin and on the website that this group called Courage was now operating within the realms of the Newman Center, which is facilitated at St. Thomas Aquinas Parish. And I went, oh, okay, fine. Sure, great. Another group for, to help people out. Fine.
Yeah.
And then just out of curiosity, because on the face page, the homepage of the thing, it's quite noble. Sure, it is a support group for gay men and women that wish to lead a life of celibacy and chastity. I thought, okay, that's honorable. I don't have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because if that's a part of, a way for the Church to help people discern a religious vocation, that's an open door. And I know many people that have taken that door. But when I started flipping through the pages of the website of Courage, very quickly the message changed.
Mm-hmm.
And you get into the finer print, and especially if you get into listening to the podcast and watching the video presentations of lectures and homilies and sermons, you realize that is not what Courage is about. Courage is about reparative therapy, which is highly contentious. It's about praying yourself straight. It's telling the person that they are defective.
They have to reparative therapy. They have to repair themselves through therapy.
Well, reparative therapy in terms of curing homosexuality.
Right.
That's what reparative therapy is. Praying yourself straight. It's not about dealing with this condition called homosexuality and living with that. It's about creating, finding the straight person within.
Right.
And one of the great things that it says right close to the top is that homosexuality is a choice. It is blatantly a choice.
All right.
It's possibly a defect. I could just go through the whole thing, but I'd rather people just go to the website themselves and.
Oh, but there were some real tidbits here. I gotta mention my favorite. Telling that they're defective, people that they're defective or incomplete. Praying yourself straight, that was another one. Oh, yeah, here. The New York-based Courage International is a member of Positive Alternatives to Homosexuality. That was a good one.
Meaning, the positive alternative being heterosexual.
Right, of course.
Yeah, what else could it be?
Oh, my God. And I think I have one more here. No, I can't find it. But the spiritual support, right? Spiritual support. I think they use that term very specifically, and they have this whole 12-step program.
Yes, and they're very blatant about it. They say, yes, we are so happy to use this and borrow it from Alcoholics Anonymous. We just changed a few words to suit our cause. Yeah.
So enlighten me then. I've never seen. I'm familiar with 12 steps, but I've never seen them. So how does the 12 steps of repair begin?
Well, you talk about that while I pull up the webpage on my iPhone.
It's just too good to pass over.
It is.
I know that you said while you're looking for that, of course, you're another concern that you had, of course, is that young people, who go. To these sermons, if they're called that, perhaps confused or frightened, maybe even about their sexual orientation and being exposed.
Of course.
To these kind of teachings.
No, I don't have it. Well, we can refer to it later. Just
Okay.
Everybody, you can go to the website. It is www.couragerc.org.
Well, hopefully you'll listen to Stuart first, but
Yes.
we'll give that out later.
Yeah.
But Courage what? RC?
CourageRC.org.
RC. What's RC stand
Roman
for?
Catholic.
Oh, of course. All
Yes.
right. So, okay. So lots of nuggets in there.
There are. I
Google it,
like
yeah.
as I was quoted to have said in the Toronto Star that after 15 minutes I hyperventilated,
Oh,
which is
no.
really the
Oh,
truth.
no.
I had to lay down.
Oh, no.
Not being overly dramatic. No, I was completely aghast because if, to be a religious, a Christian, to represent the Christian idea, fundamentally it has to be based on love.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, how I direct myself through my life, and certainly through my spiritual path, discerning it through the Roman Catholic tradition, is that has to be the number one detail.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the love? If there's no love, then it can't be right.
Yeah, well, in their minds, though, it would be love, wouldn't it? Because they're loving you by helping you to heal your condition.
Well, that
Right?
that would be more of
That's
well, no,
their take on love.
As we like to say, in that notion of love, it's great that they find Jesus with them, but they're not with Jesus themselves.
Yes. Well said. Mm-hmm.
And there are many groups that do perpetuate that sort of notion, and I won't say it because I like to walk freely on the streets without fear of my life.
Sorry. Why am I laughing? There's something about you that just you've got a lovely sense of humor, but a bit of a dark one too, like me.
It's all those years of playing really bad people, I guess. I don't know.
Oh no.
But in this story, what happened is they came in.
Yeah.
I discovered this on the website, and then when we tried to approach the parish and the diocese in this issue, if we could really just as a community come together and talk about this and discern why is this here. We have no problem with the notion of there being a support group for gay men and women within the Catholic Church. There are many, and I'm a member of another one who's of another parish, which is very supportive and beautifully discerned. But this one, because of its toxic reality, preaching that people are defective, people need to be repaired, and if they don't, they're damned. And when they put this group within an environment where they're dealing with young 18, 19-year-olds, young 20-somethings who are leaving home for the first time, who are literally meeting themselves for the first time, and possibly coming from very strict environments, and the dogma of their growing up is toxic to who they're discovering who they really are. I've been through that situation, and I know people that have committed suicide over this. Myself, it has taken me through great depression, not just as a youth, but there have been moments in my life where my relationship with the Catholic Church, we came to crossroads, and I took 10 years off. I did a whole Buddhist quest, which really has enlightened my return. Because it taught me so many things that I was taking so many things personally that I shouldn't have even considered personal.
Right. Huh.
But life has that way of teaching things. But when you have the group like this centered in this type of environment of questioning youth, you just have to look at films like Latter Days to see what a group like this does. The group Courage has its roots in the evangelical movement of the United States, and this is where that whole notion of praying yourself straight, therapy, and basically forcing heterosexuality until it becomes a reflexive habit. Basically, they're reducing it to that notion. Yeah. If you practice to be straight, you'll be straight. Yeah. All it does is all what you're doing basically is repressing your innate your nature, and that's never healthy.
That's scary. It is.
But at this point, where our frustration was the fact that we could not communicate about this. We approached the parish, we approached the archdiocese, and because we couldn't get that conversation, myself and a few other concerned parishioners, we went to the university to say, what can we do?
Mm-hmm.
This should not exist.
And
not in this learned environment where there's supposed to be a degree of intelligence and wisdom.
Mm-hmm. And also in a city like Toronto, it's just really hard
Exactly.
to fathom, And in Ontario, where we have new gay premier now.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah. That's Canada. I mean, we're much more tolerant than
Mm-hmm.
the Americans are.
Yes.
It's yeah.
But
Toronto especially.
but in terms of religion, through
Mm-hmm.
denominations of religions, they of course they have the prerogative to teach what they're going to teach, and they will teach what they wish to teach, based on what they understand.
And they probably have what they call converts, right? People who've succeeded, quote unquote, in praying themselves straight and live a life of denial, most likely.
Yeah, it ends up to that. They do have statistics on the website. 33% comes to mind. Whether it's long-term success, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there are many, many statistics in there. One of the things that I found very objectionable on this website and about this group is that the statistics that they use, they do not update it. They have not updated it. It's not to the statistics of 2013. They're using data from the early to mid 90s.
Oh, that's
and
hilarious.
one of the references that I find really atrocious, and it's fear mongering, is something that is cited, I believe, from 92, where they declare that 1 in every 3 gay men and women will die of AIDS.
Oh, wow.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And there's a whole litany of other things that they declare, but just as audacious as that.
Yeah.
And so they're, have a young mind flipping through this website. Also, a major part of the conversation of this website is they talk about homosexuality and homosexual attraction. It's akin to sexual addiction. And if you listen to a lot of the podcasts and the lectures that are on this website, what they're talking about is sexual addiction.
Doesn't that go back to some of those, I don't know what the right language to use here is, but there's, perhaps it's Orthodox, the real Orthodox Catholicism where, anybody who's interested in sex is, for things other than procreation is verging on addiction.
Well, if that's the case, then why don't they have it for heterosexuals as well that are having sex without, outside the marriage, or married couples who are having sex without but not allowing it to come to pregnancy and childbirth.
Yeah.
If that's the issue, then don't have it a gay issue. Have it an issue of sexuality.
But to me, I'm just saying that to me that idea sounds just as preposterous.
Well, yeah, and in that, what I would like to talk about, or just sort of next reference, is what the Roman Catholic Church actually talks about in terms of chastity and homosexuality, because there are in the Catechism of the Church, this is the Church's actual stand on the issue.
Okay.
And if I can see by the light in here, hang on.
I know, it's pretty bad. You want mine? You
Yes,
can borrow
please.
mine.
As we slide it down.
What happened?
Oh, now we have.
We have light.
We have light. Okay. So here we are. It's Article 2357 in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and it reads: homosexuality refers to relations between men or between women who experience an exclusive or predominant sexual attraction toward persons of the same sex. It has taken a great variety of forms through the centuries and in different cultures. Its psychological genesis remains largely unexplained, basing itself on sacred scriptures. Pardon me, let me rephrase that. Its psychological genesis remains largely unexplained, period. Basing itself on sacred scripture, which presents homosexual acts as acts of grave depravity, tradition has always declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. They are contrary to natural law. They close the sexual act to the gift of life. They do not proceed from a genuine affective and sexual complementarity. Under no circumstances can they be approved. That's one article. Article 2358 in the Catechism. The number of men and women who have deep-seated homosexual tendencies is not negligible. This inclination, which is objectively disordered, constitutes for the most of them a trial. They must be accepted with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. Every sign of unjust discrimination in their regard should be avoided. These persons are called to fulfill God's will in their lives and, if they are Christians, to unite to the sacrifice of the Lord's cross the difficulties they may encounter from their condition. Article 2359. Homosexual persons are called to chastity by the virtues of self-mastery that teach them inner freedom, at times by the support of disinterested friendship, by prayer and sacramental grace. They can and should gradually and resolutely approach Christian perfection. So, for myself, having been lifelong Catholic and being, over half of my life an out gay male in the Catholic Church, to be honest, I don't have a problem with it. And I do appreciate that middle article about how gay men and women must be respected, must be shown compassion, should not be discriminated against. That I appreciate. The other stuff, I don't even listen to it.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, because, there's a whole many reasons, but it's part of, my coming to terms, the discernment of my spirituality within the institution. To me, there's two very different notions. A religious, or, adhering to a religion, or adhering to the spirituality. And I adhere very much to the spirit, as opposed to religion. To me, religion is something man-made. Spirituality is something of the divine.
Yes. I mean, I have to admit, I find you a very intriguing Catholic, given that you left and were a Buddhist for a while. Or would you have called yourself a Buddhist? You were studying Buddhism, or did you consider yourself a Buddhist during that time?
I didn't outright call myself Buddhist, but I did say that I'm following Buddhism, or I'm seeking in a Buddhist path.
Yeah, because somebody who has, you never really choose something unless you have the choice to not choose it, unless you have the flexibility within yourself to not choose it, because otherwise it's not really a choice.
No, but I've always surrounded myself with people that just, whacked me on the backside of the head and would throw life-altering questions in my face and wouldn't let me get away with it just because.
Right.
And one of these people, a very, very dear friend, lost him way too soon to leukemia. Oh. And he took it upon himself to just challenge me on certain life issues, and he was throwing me these questions that were coming from the Buddhist tradition, and I couldn't answer. And Stuart Graham without an answer just should never happen in my mind. And so I discovered that, all right, I don't have answers. And so this is a path that I need to go down. And I realized I should never have answers.
Oh, good. I was going to say, did you ever find them? Yeah.
No. And I think if the day I do find them, that's the day I'm not here.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's been always my belief, Yeah. Life fully lived is about engaging in good questions and not grasping at the answers.
Exactly.
So what kinds of, out of curiosity, I don't know if this is putting you on the spot, if you can remember any of them, but what kinds of questions did he throw your way that were sort of intrinsically Buddhist? Challenged you?
Oh, I don't remember specific questions.
Yeah.
I do remember, it was just the whole notion of holding yourself to task about, balancing what you are doing. Is it life-giving to yourself, the people around you, and the universe about you? And it just rewiring my existence to that whole notion, that because I think like anybody growing up and going through life, we go through periods where we become toxic to ourselves, and we either suffer the lack of correction and end up in a very bad place, or if we're fortunate enough, we are corrected by the environment around us, and we come to these realizations, and true wisdom then comes into one's life.
I'm thinking, my mind sometimes gets stimulated in unexpected directions during the good interviews. But I'm thinking about actually a conversation I had online with someone, a man on a site, dating site, and we were talking about, we both share the belief that just because a relationship isn't forever doesn't mean it's a failure. We both believe that you can share your journey with someone and it can be incredibly rewarding and stimulating and a whole bunch of really wonderful things, but then your paths might cross. It may be, last for the duration of your life, or your paths might cross, but we have to use different measures for these things. And his rationale for two of his previous relationships not lasting was that one or the other outgrew each other. And he said he was hoping to find someone who could grow at the same rate he did. And I said, well, I'm not sure that ever happens. I'm not sure that we ever find somebody who grows at the same rate we do. And I think that perhaps, what makes a good relationship a fit, and I'm no expert. I mean, I've spent most of my life outside of a relationship, but being as unconventional a spirit as I am, but
and the Buddhist would say, that's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it just is.
It just is, yeah. That drives me, you can take that to only so far before it drives you crazy, don't you think?
Yep, and it does.
So, I'm no expert, but I said, it seems to me that, whether or not a relationship is a fit has more to do with karma and destiny, because sometimes, you have one person who just, it's your car, I mean, they sound like cliches, but you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just where you're supposed to be, giving and helping another person. Exactly. And maybe you're a lot more evolved than they are, but it's where I mean, who's to know, who's to measure that anyway?
And
right?
We don't need it measured.
And we don't need it measured.
That's part of the mystery of life.
Yeah. So I don't know. That seems to strike. So I appreciate that when you talk about, some of these, because I'd never thought about it before. Well, what kinds of things define, right? Whether or not you're in a relationship, or how long you're with someone, or what kind of qualities, help to influence whether or not you're a fit with someone. Or
even just with yourself.
Even with yourself.
Because, we ebb and flow, and even within the same person, sometimes there's, a complementary ebb and flow, of who you are and what you're doing. And then sometimes who you are and what you're doing don't jive.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, as I like to say, some days outlast your medication.
Oh, no. Oh my God! Yeah, I think we all run into that a bit, eh?
Yes.
Some of the indigenous call it walking your talk.
Yes.
Who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're not quite jiving, or you look at where you spend. There's another spiritual teacher I met once who said, "How do you spend your time?" Right? You want to know what you value, or what you're valuing, which is more active.
Yes.
At the time, just look at where you're spending all your time, and if it's not actually in sync with what you value, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Where are you spending all your time? And these days I see kids, we started the conversation before we went to air today, with kids today and a lot of grown-ups, nose stuck in their little iPhones or whatever.
Exactly. Yes.
I see kids out, they're clearly out on a night on the town with each other, a group of them, and instead of talking to each other, their nose are in their iPhones. How much sense does that make?
Or a couple in the Loblaws with a stroller, and they're each texting different people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know how to be with a person standing in front of us anymore. Our immediate environment.
Exactly.
We're not in tune.
Yes.
But we've digressed.
digressed.
We're the queen and king of digression, don't you think?
A little bit. Who needs a commercial break with us?
I should tell people who you are. We get a lot of people tuning in, like during this time, like halfway through, a few minutes in, whatever. Okay. The name of the program is Being There. I'm Jessie Mendes, and Stuart Graham is my guest. He is my handy-dandy piece of paper, baritone from Saskatchewan. A baritone is defined as?
A lower voice? A singer, a lower male voice.
A singer with a lower voice. Yeah, yes. I can feel it. It's really, I love the lower voices. Former liturgical. That sounds so awkward, like a word that doesn't want to be pronounced.
It's very ecclesiastical.
How do you do that?
Liturgical.
How do you do that? God, that other word. How did you do that? So
ecclesiastical.
It just rolls off your tongue. How do you do that?
It's a lifetime.
Oh, all right. Practice, right?
I think I learned that word when I was in grade 3.
In grade 3?
In catechism class, yes.
What's catechism? Is that
it's Sunday school for Catholic children.
Catechism class.
Everybody else goes to Sunday school. We go to catechism.
Well, I still think you have to have a propensity for it. I do. I've never pronounced those awkward words. I just look at it and I go, that's not a word that should be said out loud. You know?
Stick with me, Jesse. I've got an education for you.
Maybe I'll learn to, understand people more. Sometimes I can't, the more complicated and convoluted the language, the more syllables in a word.
Yes.
I have a hard time following too, so I have to get that part of my brain going. I think it's about kickstarting that part of your brain. It's got to be a certain part of your brain. You know how
Possibly.
Just some people, they're very gifted musically. You are very gifted musically. I am not. And so you've got that part of your brain happening. It's like, people who can say, people who stutter.
Yes.
Who don't stutter when they sing. Or people with brain damage.
Yes.
Who can communicate if they're singing, but they can't speak when they're not singing.
Yeah, I know people like that.
Because it's a whole different part of the brain.
Exactly.
So you can actually we're going to do hopefully a show on this. We're going to do on your whole musical career, which fascinates me. But the musical brain, that's what we can call it, the theme of the show, right?
There we go. The musical brain. But today's show is
on God, why were we here again? Yes, we want to get back to the church because you are a former liturgical minister and lector at a parish where there was this controversy.
Yes.
And U of T campus. And we've talked quite a bit about that controversy. And if people want to find out about these Courage organization, then they can certainly Google them. It's easy to find them. But we have not gotten to, and we're doing okay for time, actually.
Oh, good.
Believe it or not, we're actually doing okay for time. The church, before it became corrupted, is that too strong a word, probably? Corrupted by politics and ego. No, it's not, I don't think.
So the early church.
The early church,
okay.
Yeah. Before it got taken over by pedophilia and God knows,
Oh my goodness,
the
yes.
more extreme.
Yeah.
Because that's what your love affair is with. Would that be fair to say, the early church?
Yeah, it's been part of my journey, and it's actually the resonance of the early church, and I'll get into that in a moment, that really yanked me back and gave me that true sense of home in my heart and my spiritual home. And a lot of it has to do because I was raised in a very devout French Catholic family. And growing up with that, it's not just the Sunday ritual, it was how we operated every day. And, as a very young child, one of my greatest memories was my mother, when she needed a babysitter, she dropped me off at the convent in Estevan, Saskatchewan, to the Grey Nuns, and it was the most fabulous time. Sister Frances would wing out her guitar, we would sing songs, and she'd make me chocolate milk.
Wow.
What a great time. And then, quite often, she would walk with me hand in hand down to the chapel, and I would attend evening prayer with the nuns.
Huh.
And it was mystical. And here I was, 4 years old, and I have this vivid memory. And, my mother says that I was always of that type of child that, I would, from the moment I could talk, I was asking all these existential questions about God and the universe, and my aunts and uncles taking me out for walks, they would drop me off and said, "Sue, he's doing it again, make him stop." Referring to asking these difficult questions.
Right, yeah.
So obviously it's something that was innate within me, but that was my environment, and I was quite thankful for it. Because it constantly asked me questions about myself, my function within the community, teaching love, and so like every other young boy or girl in the church, I went through the process of becoming an altar server, and as teenager, I read, the readings in Mass.
You were a choir boy?
And no,
No?
my sister sang in the choir, but because at that time I didn't know I loved to sing, but I was studying piano and just serendipitously, that's my word that I have issues with. You have yours, I have mine. What language are we today? One of the strange things, because I studied piano as a child and I got into, I started playing organ for Mass in these little country churches, country parishes. And so I got involved musically, and I loved it. I loved the music, and I loved doing it for the Mass, and I loved that the congregation sang. And at the age of 16, out of, weird circumstances, I found myself organist at the cathedral, St. Paul's Cathedral in Saskatoon. And doing Mass, being responsible for the music for the Bishop Mahoney, and had a great time with that, playing a big pipe organ, 16-year-old, and having 20 singers in the choir singing around me. It was really quite heady, but the spirit was there. I was on fire. I felt it. I loved it, and it
stimulated you.
Completely.
It did, because it seems to me that you would do the same thing every week, and you would get bored with that, someone like you.
No, but it was always changing.
Okay.
We weren't always doing the same music all the time, and plus, at that time, I was playing for funerals, I was playing for weddings, and so, for a 16-year-old, I was pulling in a good income, not necessarily for the Masses, but weddings and funerals. In the mid-'80s, what 16-year-old could pull in $1,500 a week? Just from playing weddings and funerals.
Right.
At a cathedral.
Right.
And the money was nice, but that wasn't my objective with it. And then I went to university at University of Saskatchewan, got involved with the Newman Center. There was no Courage group there. And started being part of retreat teams, and I started myself being involved with religious orders, like the Oblates of St. Mary's and the Franciscan orders, and being part of their retreat teams, meaning I was one of the facilitators giving talks to the kids that were going to the retreat, and I started doing youth ministry at the diocesan level as well. So I was really on fire, and Bishop Mahoney, of course, thought, well, here's a fantastic candidate for the seminary, and I have to say, I really thought about it. Really hard.
What's a seminary?
Seminary is where men go to...
monk.
No, not a monk, but you go... it's your entrance into religious life to become a priest.
Okay.
And...
well, what's the difference between a parishioner and a priest?
Well, a parishioner is a lay person, a non-ordained person.
Okay.
And a parishioner is a person who attends a certain parish.
Okay.
Who is a member of a parish.
And a liturgical minister?
A liturgical minister is somebody
What's the difference between that and a priest?
A liturgical
person
minister, for the most part, is non-ordained as
Okay.
well. We don't go through the theological training. We are lay people that have responsibilities in facilitating the liturgy, meaning the Mass. And we could either be responsible for hospitality, we could be responsible for the offertory, taking the collection, we could be lectors, meaning we do the readings, the first and second readings, the intentions, Eucharistic minister, helping in the distribution of communion.
Right.
And even the music director, that's part of the liturgical ministry as well.
Okay.
So, I did that, but my music vocation, as I like to say, was stronger
Took over.
than any religious vocation, but that sense has never left me.
But for you, they're one and the same, aren't they? I mean, you find your spirituality through your music, it sounds like.
Yeah, my music, whether I'm singing Palestrina or I'm singing Richard Wagner, it's all a meditation, because it demands my connection to my inner divinity to be able to bring all of this to life. If not, it's not interesting to anybody. Mostly myself, not interesting. But so in Saskatoon, this is where I myself started finding myself questioning, who am I? And the question of sexuality came out as well, but that growing up in rural Saskatchewan, that was something that was never part of the conversation. I had no clue. The words gay and homosexuality.
You hear the church bells?
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
In the summer, it's quite something with the window open. They're the backdrop of the whole conversation, but
sort of lends itself to this conversation.
Yes, timely, very appropriate. Please continue.
Yeah, so I just considered myself asexual because I wasn't having attraction to either, and I was certainly enjoying a very high-spirited relationship with my relationship with my church and my spirituality, my faith, and
you had no impulses that way.
No.
Oh wow.
No.
I don't know what that would
No,
be
but
like.
I knew there was I ever since I was very little, I knew there was something different about me, and but I didn't care, for whatever reason, and
you were able to embrace it.
Yeah, and then during my time at University of Saskatchewan, I was in sciences, and I thought, what am I doing there? It was so totally against what I really wanted to do, and so I quit that and ran off and joined the circus and found myself in Montreal in a dance company, and within 1 week of living in Montreal and certainly working in a dance company, I discovered exactly what I was about. And and I came out there, and in that I took a step back from the church just because I needed to, because I discovered I had a lot of conflict that I needed to figure out.
Yeah. No, that's I really admire that ability to really step back from something and question it, and it's too bad that there wasn't more of that out there and more people in power encouraging people to do that and to really look at their faith and just explore,
Well, yes, during that time, because that would have been the mid-late 80s.
Yeah.
Yes, that wasn't available to me, but now, the complete opposite can be said. There's a plethora of groups, both within the church and secular groups, to help facilitate that because of all of the awareness that has been created from pride movements and other support in that nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You talked about how the mysticism of the early church.
Okay.
Was,
well, yeah, where I discovered that, where I really had the chance to discover that after, those years of separation, and in 2001 I found myself, I moved to Toronto, and that's when I swung through that Buddhist phase. In 2007 I started a project in Mexico, and I found myself commuting a lot down to Mexico, and in 2008 I moved down there, and during that time met a fantastic person, a man who was just a real beam of light, really on fire, one of the most beautiful people that I've ever met, and he was preparing to enter religious life, and that was very difficult for both of us because we had, without trying, a very serious and very honest relationship and very rich relationship
Chemistry.
started. Yes, but his vocation to a religious life was much stronger. And for myself, the most difficult thing that I had ever done was, in loving him, I supported him in his vocation, and I helped him prepare entry into the monastery. And it totally yanked out my heart, but at the same time, it brought me home.
Oh man, that's beautiful.
And I remember the first day, for the whole summer, he said, "Stuart, I'm going to Mass. Come with me." And one of the occasions I said, "Okay, I'm going to come with you." And I went to Mass, and it was in this little parish just outside of Querétaro, in just north of Mexico City. So it was a country parish, and people were coming up in their donkey carts, and it was just a really earthy place, and I loved it. And in its humility, which I needed, because I don't think I was in my most humble space at that time, I sat there and I took in the Mass, And when it came time to come up for communion, and I prepared myself and I went to communion. And just coming up and to receive that sacrament that I had received ever since I was a young child, I was so overwhelmed with this just very warm, all-encompassing embrace. And it just, I started to cry because I had this overwhelming sense that I had come home. And I didn't want to ever leave it again.
It's really beautiful.
And so when during that summer, he had done a couple more retreats at the monastery in his preparation to enter. When he did finally enter, he invited me to come retreat at the monastery, the Benedictine monastery in Cuernavaca. And that was my first experience with the Benedictines. And I'm glad that he made me do a lot of reading before I went in, because I needed the preparation. Because first he said, Stuart, here's the rule of St. Benedict. It's a little teeny book, 72 pages. Each page is a different rule. And this was a list of rules that St. Benedict himself wrote back in the mid-6th century. And all it was is a list of rules to facilitate a bunch of men living together and not kill each other. So it's a recipe for good communal living.
Okay.
And that's all it was. But
to cohabitate without murdering each other.
Yes, and one of the rules which I love, it says make sure when you go to bed you take off your knife. Because I guess obviously they wore a knife underneath their habit for whatever they might need. They lived in the desert. So I went through this reading, and I also read a book called The Cloister Walk by Kathleen Norris, who very interestingly, she herself was born and raised Presbyterian. She continues to be Presbyterian, but she's an oblate Benedictine, which means she's taken the vows. And I read her, and what I realized when I entered into retreat of the Benedictines is that here was a way of life that has not changed in 1,500 years. They rarely read the scripture. They prayed the Psalms. So it's all about emotional resonance. And what I felt was the resonance of a purity, of a spirituality that was of the early church, the mysticism of the early church. It brought us all to a point of, this is why we're here in the first place. Forget the 1,500 years of history in Rome or in Constantinople, in Istanbul, where the Byzantine Church was at the time, and the fights between the two popes and yada, 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 the Borgias, all of this. As the prior of the monastery said to me in a meeting, he said, Stuart, the church has really been bad. Well, to quote him properly, and excuse me if this is not proper for the radio, he said, the mother church throughout history has been a slut, and it's been a bumpy ride. You're adult enough to discern what is divine and what is of man. Aspire to the divine.
Wow. That's a hell of a place to end on. We're out of time.
Already?
Wow. Yeah, already. It's just flown by. We've got to wrap. It's just that tight. We got to wrap. And wow. I'm really already looking forward to our next interview. I'm hoping, crossing fingers, that you'll come back.
Yeah, I'll be there.
And I'd love to talk about this because my whole spirituality thing is about sort of taking the divine and the divine being through our humanity, not either or. But I suspect that this quote was not intended literally.
No.
At all. So that's why I'd love to pursue that conversation. It's
Yes.
sort of like the seed for the next conversation.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's been so enriching having you.
Thank you very much, Jessie. It's been a pleasure.
What a treat. Thank you so much. Yes. So I should tell people again who you are, because folks will want to hear the podcast. You've just heard Stuart Graham. He is a former liturgical minister and a lector at the parish.
St. Thomas Aquinas.
Aquinas. Thank you. St. Thomas Aquinas Parish at the Newman Center at the U of T. And he spoke about the controversy that recently happened there. And, of course, about religious life. This interview will go to podcast starting tomorrow. We don't know what time. Probably later in the day on Tuesday, it will switch over. Go to www.ciut.fm and just scroll down. I think, you have to go to the blue box on the right that says Audio Archives, and then you click on that and you scroll down until you find Monday at 6 p.m. The name of this here program is Being There, and my name is Jessie Mendes. There's also an email address there. You can get in touch with me if you'd like. Once again, Stuart Graham, thank you so much for being here. We're going to do a show on music coming up in the weeks to come, so thanks again. And I'd like to thank Quentin DeBecker and Lena Shulman for technical production. Have a great week.